Hey guys, I wanted to run over a few of the modifications I'm going to do to this 85 S10 Blazer transmission cross member when I put the Turbo 400 in. One thing that I wanted to do, and this is purely because I'm lowering the engine in the engine bay by about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches. The final amount that the engine will be lowered in the engine bay kind of remains to be seen, because I'm going to go in, take the engine out, which I didn't really want to do, but to do it right I have to pull the engine out of the vehicle. So I will sawzall basically off the 2.8 V6 stands or pedestals. I don't know for sure what term would be industry correct, but I'm going to try to cut those things off with probably a sawzall, and then grind everything smooth. Then what the plan is to test fit the engine with the transmission. So our plan, after setting the engine down on the cross member, we will be able to kind of measure what's the best plan of action for attaching the TransDAP adapter plates to the front cross member, making sure I have ample clearance between the oil pan and the cross member. Plus, I need to try my best not to pinch the union between the transmission and the engine too close to the actual firewall and transmission tunnel, because one of the problems you have with these S10 V8 swaps is you almost have no room to get to bell housing bolts. Let's be more specific. You can't hardly get to them because it pinches the area where your transmission bolts to the back of your block so close to the firewall / transmission tunnel. You can't get sockets on them, and you can't hardly reach back and try to set that right down on the cross member with the adapter plate. I may end up getting rid of the adapter plate and trying to mount the actual rubber V8 mount directly to the cross member. It depends on how much space is readily available, how flat, how secure. I have to get in the middle of it to find out exactly how low we're going to go and how far back we're going to be able to move the engine, because I've decided that I'm going to have a lot better options with drive shaft length if I don't have the engine as far forward. You know, other benefits to not having your engine too far forward is better balance. You're going to have better handling. You're not going to have near as much weight right over the nose in front of your front tires. So there's a lot of good reasons for moving the engine back closer to the factory, what people consider the factory location. I'm not all that excited about putting it in the actual factory location, because that's where you run into that problem, not being able to get to your transmission bolts. So hopefully I can find a happy medium where I can set the engine in where I've got at least a little bit of accessibility to my transmission bell housing bolts. I hopefully will be able to miss or not run into my heater box. And this should, knock on wood 20 times over, fix all the clearance problems I've been having with my steering shaft and my driver's side exhaust manifold. So fingers crossed, that's what we're going to try to do. If you look at this cross member, so last night we moved the Turbo 400 out of our van, and I realized it had like a homemade transmission mount. I don't know if you guys can see that. I don't want to get too much in the shadows, but it's basically just a piece of bar stock or flat plate metal, strap of metal. Somebody has MIG welded what looks to be like a regular S10 style mount to the bottom of this metal plate, and then they had it bolted to the back of that Turbo 400. You know, I'm not against using this. I mean, it's not damaged or broken in any way. The changes I'm going to make to this cross member, this is super heavy. thick wall steel pipe. So basically what Andy had me do when he built this cross member for me is I went and bought, I think it was like a foot, 2 foot, I don't know, because we ended up just basically cutting the piece I bought in half, grafting them in one at a time with the cross member and everything mounted in the vehicle. So if you guys want to replicate a cross member similar to this, he did it by basically having me run and grab some of this pipe, measured it, cut it, and inserted one side at a time. Okay, so you know, that way everything stays connected to the frame. This stays connected to the frame. You use whatever kind of jacks or support you need, and you keep everything in its factory location as you graph in these pipes, which gives you plenty of clearance for dual exhaust up to 3-inch, if not 3.5-inch exhaust. If you look at these yellow markings I've made, I am going to section out the bottom half of this pipe because I am going to lower my engine at least, I'd say 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, if not slightly more. And at this point my exhaust pipes are dead center in pipes, so when I come down 1.25 inches, if I don't section that out, the exhaust is going to hit it, and that's no bueno. So I'm just going to open this up. I'm not going to lose any structural integrity because trust me, this thing is super strong and heavy, which I don't like. But I'm going to section out the bottom of these so I got room to come down with my exhaust. And then here on the front of this lip, I had always had problems with the transmission mount not wanting to set flush on this mount, because it seemed like every time I tried to get it to set where I wanted it, it always ended up riding on this stupid lip. So I have the option of going ahead and just grinding off this front lip so that it won't hang up and sit funky on this thing, provided, now keep in mind, we're going to reposition the motor and transmission, so I have all the options in the world to slide this up and down the frame, because this crossmember sets on top of the frame. The Blazers 2-wheel drive, make specify because 4-wheel drives are a whole different ball game. 2-wheel drive S10 Blazers, especially the 85 model, that square body style, the transmission crossmember sets right on top of the frame just like an old Chevelle or Camaro. It doesn't have that weird 90-degree mount on one side, flat on the other configuration. So basically I can just slide this thing up and down the frame rails, and if I got to add new holes, I'll add new holes to the frame to either mount this thing from the top, which I don't really want to do. My goal is to modify this thing to where it has bushings that mount on the inside of the frame rails, similar to like a Ford Mustang, because I feel that way I'm going to have a lot more adjustability in how high I set the cross member, and it's easier to remove it from the car by just taking out one large bolt per side in a bushing than it would be fighting those, 2 bolts per side normal configuration GM uses. So these are just ideas I brainstormed as far as changing the way the crossmember mounts in the vehicle. Part of that motivation for me to change the way it mounts in the vehicle is because when you only have one hand, or let's say 1.5 hands, because sometimes I can get my arm wedged up in there and use it, really like to find an easier way to install and remove my transmission crossmember for future maintenance or whatever. So having the bushing on either side that mounts inside the frame rails would be a big step up as far as getting it in and out of the car without all this hoopla. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now. I don't know for sure what I'm going to use to do the cutting on that thick 1/4 inch wall steel tube or pipe, but I got to get that sectioned out and at least start the process as soon as possible. So that's my plan for the Turbo 400 install. moving the cross member to wherever I need it to be to coincide with where we end up putting the engine on the cross member. So it all stems around making it easy for me to work on the vehicle, pull the engine, pull the transmission, insert maintenance here. I always want to try to engineer the easiest way for me to work on it in the future by myself without having to ask people to come over. I gotta learn how to do it myself. I can't rely on others, so I need to engineer all the ideas that I can into how I set up this engine swap and transmission upgrade. So hopefully that wasn't too rambletron for you, in the words of Sloppy Mechanics. I just wanted to try to get some of this on video. Hey, I'm open to all suggestions and I need all the help I can get. So thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, hit that little bell.